Halo Infinite Season 2 has been out now for a few days, and in that time, I've been able to sink my teeth into the update, play a little bit of everything that's been added, and I think it's time to talk a little bit about this update. So I do want a disclaimer before we get into the video that obviously going into Season 2, I wasn't expecting an absolutely amazing season. We knew for the most part that we were just getting 2 maps and 3 game modes, one of which wasn't going to be there at day 1, being land grab. Now despite that though, a lot of things have popped up in this update that have been pretty detrimental in my opinion to the game, along with a variety of bugs that have also been introduced. On top of that, what we have seen is that this update did not bring back nearly as many players as I would have wanted it to. So on Steam day 1, this update was only able to bring a peak player base of 21,000 players, and day 2 that number was already down to 15,000. Now on Xbox the game was still outside of the top 10 when I looked, however it is my understanding that the Xbox most played games can lag a few days behind, so we'll have to wait and see a little bit if it squeaked into at least the top 10 on Xbox. So just for reference here, if you compare to some of the MCC seasons that came later on in the game after all of the games dropped, so after Halo 4 had already come out, if you look at those numbers compared to the numbers from Infinite Season 2, they're actually kind of comparable in some cases. And if you compare Season 2 to the drop of MCC titles, then it actually is beaten by all of them, including Halo 4. Now, like I said, Season 2 did add a lot of content, and we have a lot to talk about. So for new things, we did get the new Battle Pass, which, I mean, it's just a battle pass, it's fine. The new armor core in my opinion isn't too bad, and you do now have the ability to get credits from the premium battle pass, which is a nice little change that they made. Just like they said before the game came out too, you can still swap between the season 1 and the season 2 battle pass, assuming you purchase the season 1 premium pass. There's also currently the event going tied to Last Spartan Standing, which is totally free, and you can get those unlockables by doing the challenges, which are all tied obviously to Last Spartan Standing. Now we did get 2 maps, Breaker, which is the BTB map, and Catalyst, which is the arena map. So I've played a bit of both of these now, with obviously the caveat that one problem that you have with a game like Halo is that when you add new content and new maps, unless you have a specific playlist to play them, which currently there is for Breaker, the chances of you getting a specific map aren't that high. So while I've played a decent amount of Season 2 so far, I've really only played Catalyst a handful of times, and Breaker a fair bit more because I was playing Last Spartan Standing. But my early opinions of the maps are they're pretty decent. I think Breaker is actually a pretty cool map. It works pretty well for Last Spartan Standing in my opinion, and I do actually think it's a pretty fun BTB map, although Total Control can get really hectic on it, especially on that B hill that's literally in the bottom tunnel. That becomes an absolute meat grinder and people are just dying all over the place. But overall, I do think it's a decent map. It has a new aesthetic to it compared to the other BTB maps. Even though it has the big, pit in the middle, I would say it still plays pretty similar to those other maps. Now Catalyst on the other hand plays a lot different than the other existing arena maps that we have, and I'm still up in the air if I necessarily like the map, though it definitely looks very nice and it kind of gives me Epitaph vibes in terms of kind of how it plays. It can be a little bit hectic, but I think that might just be because I haven't really learned where exactly to go on the map and all the proper routes and everything like that. One thing that's kind of cool is that in CTF there are a lot of routes that you can pull a flag. You can take it top mid, which is obviously the risky it, but is an extremely fast pull, or you can pull it through the sides and all that stuff. Now in ranked, the map does have an overshield, a sword, and a skewer, which might be a little bit much, especially for a map this size, but I do kind of want to play a bit more of it to kind of get that opinion, but that's at least my early opinion. And also I don't know why they went with this skewer in ranked settings. I really would have liked to see another map with a sniper rifle on it, which is weird because I thought I remembered Tashi saying this was going to be a sniper rifle map, so I don't know if they changed their mind or if this is some type of weird bug. Now for new game modes, we have Last Spartan Standing, which is kind of the BR-esque, gunfight-esque game mode, and then we have King of the Hill. We'll also get Land Grab later on, but that won't come until May 24th. Last Spartan Standing I actually enjoy a lot. I think it's a lot of fun, however I do have some issues with the game mode. One, currently obviously it's only on Breaker, though that won't be an issue once this event ends, and then I actually think it'll be a lot more fun as you'll get a little bit of variety going from map map to map. The other issues though I have with it, unless they change them, are probably going to be issues on all the maps, and that has to do with kind of just how they've set up the drops and the hill itself. So they have the hill that encloses to force people to kind of move and not camp in a certain spot, but currently I think that hill moves in way too slowly. In most games it doesn't even really get to the point where it's affecting anything in the game. Also, as you play, overshields and invisibilities will just fall out of the sky, and picking up one of those pretty much gives you free kills, and I'm not a fan of those at all. I'd really like to see those pretty much removed or at least lowered in frequency by a ton, but I wouldn't mind maybe seeing weapon ordinances fall out of the sky, but I would hope they would do them a little bit more like Apex, where you would know where they were coming and when they were coming so people could fight over them as they dropped. Or even if they did that with the overshield, at least you'd be able to contest them a bit more, because currently they kind of fall pretty quickly and they'll fall right next to you sometimes, and you can just pick them up and then get right into a fight. So there isn't really a way to control those or contest them, similar to kind of those drops that you have in Apex, or at least used to. I don't know if Apex still has those on the current map. They've also added some new playlists and made some changes to the existing playlists. So if you look at the list here, we have the event playlist, which is Last Spartan Standing, Quick Play, which now has attrition in it, Bot Boot Camp, which was there before, BTB, Rumble Pit, which is the free-for-all playlist, but it also includes some different free-for-all variants with some wacky settings, like there's Ninja Slayer, which is energy swords and grapple shots, Vampire Ball, which is oddball, but killing people with the ball gives you an overshield, and then there's Rocket Repulsors, where everyone spawns with a rocket launcher and a repulsor. Then you have the King of the Hill only playlist, the Fiesta only playlist, Tactical Slayer, Team Slayer, which actually now has BR variants, and then Ranked Arena. So the new playlists are definitely a nice breath of fresh air. However, I do wish we would have gotten more ranked playlists, which we did not get. Along with this, we also got the narrative sequence, which is like a little cutscene that ties into the current event with Last Spartan Standing. And I'm not gonna lie to you guys, it didn't really do a whole lot for me. It's just a cutscene and then you're done with it. So to me, it's nothing special, but if you're into the lore, you might have found it pretty cool. And they do introduce the new banished AI in there, which I guess is kind of cool. Now, this is all the new content in season 2. So this content we kind of knew about going into the season, and nothing here was too much of a surprise. Some of the content is pretty cool, like Last Spartan Standing. Some of it is a little bit hit or miss, like King of the Hill. I'm not really a huge fan of the changes. I don't necessarily hate it, but to me it plays a little bit more like Headquarters or Hardpoint from Call of Duty than it necessarily does King of the Hill, but it's not the worst game mode in the world, and I do need to play more of it. I haven't gotten it very much in ranked. I've mostly only played it with the social settings. Along with that, like I said, most of the other new content we knew about. The maps, they're fine, but at the end of the day, it is just 2 new maps, and if you only play Arena, it's 1 new map, and if you only play BTB, it's 1 new map. So there isn't a ton of new content there for you. Now, besides the new content though, which like I said, isn't bad by any means, there were a lot of other changes and bugs introduced in this season, and that's really what I want to talk about for the rest of this video. So for bugs, currently when you're shooting a gun, it'll just randomly not shoot. Whether it's the battle rifle, the pistol, the heat wave, a lot of people are speculating this has to do with the new dead zone setting that you can set on your triggers, but honestly, I see people messing with those all the time, and it's still happening, and this is a bug that needs to be fixed literally ASAP. It's ruining the game competitively, it's ruining the game in social, and it's just not fun to be shooting at someone and literally have one of your shots not come out and end up losing a gunfight. I know bugs get introduced in all sorts of weird ways, but it shocks me that this would make it to the launch version, and I haven't even really seen them come out and say that they have a fix for this or that a fix is coming, so I'm a little bit worried how long this is going to stay in the game. Along with that, the game still seems to crash a lot. A lot of my ranked games in my placements were still 4v3s or 3v4s, which is just extremely annoying, so I don't know how much the new like optimization really seemed to make a difference. On top of that, there's these speed lines in the game, which for some reason now just won't go away. I think I've turned them off, but for some reason they still randomly show up. Not that big a deal, but just kind of annoying. So that was kind of the main bugs that were introduced in season 2. Now let's talk a little bit about some of the changes that were introduced in season 2, and this is where the season gets the most contentious, and in my opinion is the weakest and worst part of the season update. So the first thing that 343 did in this season is they heavily nerfed kind of the movement tech in the game. They nerfed the super slide, which was the slides you could hit when you would jump down onto a ramp and your character would get a big boost in speed. Those have been heavily nerfed, so you no longer get that big boost in speed. Now, my understanding for the reason that these have been removed is people are using them to get out of the maps, and I won't lie, I didn't see that very much, and I did also really enjoy enjoy the slides, so it is a bummer to see them nerfed like this, but the regular curb slides are still in the game. So if you run off of a curb or a ledge or something and you time your slide correctly, you will still get a pretty large speed boost, along with the smaller ramps. Those are still going to give you a speed boost too. Now, while I'm not a fan of the slides being nerfed, I can reason with it. Now, the next one I think is just purely a mistake on 343's part, and I really wonder their motives behind removing it, because quite literally nobody was asking for this, and that was the removal of basically every skill jump in the game. So if you read the patch notes, there's a section about jumps where they said that multiple collision fixes on previously released multiplayer maps were improved to smooth out traversal on the ground, fix players standing on out of bounds rock ledges, and removing or adjusting collision on small props and thin ledges. So this change has basically deleted a ton of the skill jumps that were in the game, where you would jump on a little ledge or a thing that was sticking out to quickly traverse the map, or maybe get around a clamber or something like that. These were all over all of the existing maps, and people had really put a lot of time into learning these and perfecting these, because a lot of them weren't very easy to hit, especially in the heat of a game. I'm extremely bummed that 343 just completely got rid of these, and I think it's a huge mistake. Not only was nobody asking for them to be removed, I also don't see who this removal is kind of assisting. Casual players literally weren't seeing these skill jumps in their games anyways, and the ranked players that were performing these liked them because they provided a movement skill gap and a learning curve on top of just the regular gunplay and the regular movement of the game. The worst part too is that there wasn't really any communication about this ahead of time. They just went ahead and removed it and upset a whole slew of players without really seeing if it was a change that people would want. If we continue though into the changes of Season 2, there are more ones that baffle me, and that is actually on the campaign side. So you guys probably know they removed the tank gun glitch, which allowed you to basically kind of cheese lasso, and I don't really get this one either. Sure, it was a glitch and it allowed people to cheese lasso, but I don't understand why they didn't just make it so that if you used it, maybe you couldn't get the lasso achievement or something like that. Fun glitches in single player games literally don't hurt anyone, and I don't understand why you would go out of your way to spend dev time to remove something like this unless it was literally game breaking, which in this case it wasn't. It was just a fun glitch where you could run around and shoot a tank gun at people, and especially if it wasn't going to affect the lasso achievement, who really cares, right? You're not affecting anyone else's game by using the tank gun, and so this is a change that really makes no sense to me, especially when you have to think that they have to put dev resources into changes like this, to remove the tank gun, to remove the skill jumps, when there are so many things in this game that need dev resources. Another thing that has hurt speedrunners and the campaign community is the 10% melee reduction that is across the board. So this was a change mostly, I think, made for multiplayer to nerf the Mangler, though it also nerfs the whole melee system obviously, which you could argue might not be a bad change since the melee in this game was pretty strong. However, I don't really understand why they reduced the melee in campaign, as this hurts speedrunners who have been running the game, and it can really ruin some of their runs now. And while I'm not a speedrunner and I don't know all the intricacies to that, I don't understand why you're nerfing melee in the campaign at this point, because it doesn't really matter. The only reason I could think this would happen is because they were tied together, but then you have the BR, which now has different melee properties in ranked and social, so it seems like they can kind of do them separately. So this one really doesn't make any sense to me. Now, everything that they changed in Season 2 wasn't bad per se. One thing that's actually really cool is they added the campaign variants of the different guns into the loot cave on fragmentation. So if you're playing BTB now and you go into the loot cave, you can actually get some of the cool campaign variants that you would get in the campaign when you'd kill those little mini bosses in the overworld. I think this is actually a really cool change, because before there really wasn't much incentive to go into the loot cave. I didn't really do it a whole ton, and now this gives you a reason to go in there, because you can get some really overpowered guns, or at least some guns that are a lot of fun and a little bit different. I hope to see these variants make their way into a Super Fiesta or even just custom game settings, but for now this is really the only place that you're gonna see them. One thing that was kind of weird about this is it wasn't in the patch notes at all. They just put it in there, and then I saw people on Twitter finding them, and I was like, oh, interesting. Another campaign thing that they removed, which really doesn't make any sense, is they removed the ability to fly the Pelican in campaign. I don't even really have much to say on this one. Again, this was just something you could do that was kind of fun, and they've now removed it, so I guess it is what it is, but some of this stuff I don't really understand. Along with this, you also had a variety of balance changes. We talked about the Mangler and melee nerf, where they nerfed melee damage across the whole game by 10%, and this indirectly makes the Mangler a 2-shot beatdown instead of a 1-shot beatdown. Now, Now, because of this melee nerf, they did have to buff the battle rifle in ranked. So in ranked, the VR stays a 2-shot beatdown, but in social, it is a 3-shot beatdown, which makes absolutely no sense to me. I don't know why you have 2 different versions of the battle rifle. You really should be keeping settings like that the same across all versions of the game, because now you're going to have players that are just confused why their gun isn't working the same, and they won't really know unless they dive into these patch notes. I am not a fan of that change at all. The Mangler nerf itself, I need to play with it more, but this does seem okay. The Mangler is still very usable, but this does get rid of some of the cheese where people would just one-shot and then melee you, so that's definitely a positive change. The Mangler, though, is still definitely very strong. Not only can you 3-shot people if you perfect them, you can still do the 2-shot drop weapon combo, which is very, very strong. Along with this, we got a Ravager buff, which kind of reverted the Ravager back to where it was in the flights, which means it's actually kind of usable, so that's kind of cool. And then they buffed the drop wall to make it drop a little bit faster and be a little bit stronger, and that's a change I'm pretty on board with. They also gave the overshield a little bit more shields, which again is something that I think we've been needing for a while. And then they made a variety of vehicle changes that I'm not going to get into. You can also now use Jeff Steitzer as an announcer in BTB, which is something people have been asking for since the flights, and you can do endless weapon drills now if you really want to train your aim. You also now have the ability to mess with the outlines if you want to change the kind of the thickness of them, or if you want to get rid of them at all. You have that ability now. Although if I'm being honest with you, I think removing them completely puts you at a disadvantage, because while the game does look prettier with them off, I feel like your opponents still having them on would have a slight advantage over you. They also now have the option for 120 Hz on the Xbox Series X, which is definitely pretty good. And then they added new kill sounds for some of the guns when you use those finisher effects, and they in my opinion can be a little bit much. I'm not sure if you can turn them off. I didn't see a setting, but I also didn't look very hard. So this is kind of where Season 2's at, right? We got the new content, which is fine. I don't really have too many qualms with the new content. And then we have the bugs that were introduced, which are obviously bad because we don't know when they're going to be fixed. And then we have the changes, which are really a mixed bag. You have changes to the movement system and the campaign, which literally nobody was asking for. But then you also have some positive changes. It's a mixed bag of pros and cons, when in theory you'd want a new season, especially the only season we're going to have for 6 months, to be much more heavy on the pros than the cons, which I don't really know if I can say that about this season update. It's a pretty mixed bag. I could really go either way depending on how I'm feeling. Now on top of this, there are a variety of things that Season 2 did not address. Now we weren't expecting them to address these things, but things like desync still exist, the progression system still sucks, the challenge system still sucks, server select still isn't in the game, and like we talked about earlier, the game just has general bugs and optimization issues and still crashes. So you still have a lot of existing issues in the game, although those might be targeted by those drop pods that we're supposed to be getting monthly, so hopefully we see some improvements there. But I will be honest, having to stomach going through all of the challenges and the weeklies again just for more cosmetics really isn't something I'm too keen to do right now. Currently I've been doing some of the challenges while I'm playing, but some of the really bad challenges returned. Like I've seen challenges where you have to backsmack people like 5 or 10 times, and just a whole bunch of other really badly designed challenges, which I have no clue why they are still in the game. So overall, how do I feel about Season 2? Like I said, it's a mixed bag. If I really had to put my pen to paper, I would say it's about 50-50. I like some of the additions, but I also really strongly dislike some of the changes that they've made. Now the worst part in my opinion about Season 2 is the fact that this is all we're getting for 6 months outside of those drop pods and the Forge beta if it does happen to come in September. We will also get campaign co-op, and while that is cool, it's not necessarily, you know, the content that I would be looking for. So with this being the only season for 6 months, it just gives me a little bit of a bitter taste in my mouth. This is all we're gonna get for 6 months, and it wasn't even a slam dunk. It really was a mixed bag. Overall though, like I said, the new content is cool. Last Spartan Standing, if they make some adjustments, possibly add something like doubles or increase the player count, could be a really fun mode, and it's a mode I've actually really been enjoying. It's probably one of my favorite things that they've added that's new in Halo Infinite. The new maps seem fine, like I talked about earlier. I'm a little bit more mixed on Catalyst currently, especially in ranked, but I do need to put some more time into it to really get my opinion set in stone there. And yeah, that's pretty much how I feel about Season 2. Let me know in the comments how you feel about Season 2. The general consensus that I'm seeing on Twitter is not very good, and that's because a lot of the changes that they made that nobody was asking for. Also, like we talked about at the top of the video, this update, especially on PC, did not bring players back. Only hitting 21k on Steam really kind of shows that other than large content like maybe the certain affinity mode, Halo Infinite is pretty much dead in the water on PC. I don't think the player base will ever completely disappear, but it's never gonna hit anywhere near the numbers it hit at launch. Xbox might be a bit of a different story, but at the time that I looked and at the time of this recording, Halo Infinite had not made its way into the top 10. And that, guys, I think is gonna do it for the video. If you guys enjoyed the video, you know what to do. Follow me over on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, all those good places, and I'll see you all next time.